the land of Okirima, where the evening sky burned in streaks of crimson and gold, every footstep was marked by the red dust of the earth. The people said this dust was sacred, the breath of the ancestors pressed into the soil. When the winds rose at dusk, the dust lifted in swirls like spirits dancing in the fading light. Children sometimes chased it, laughing, but the elders warned them, "Do not chase what you cannot catch, for not all dust is of this world." Okirima was a place of both noise and silence. In the mornings, traders filled the marketplace, their voices carrying above the bleating of goats and the cawing of restless crows. The smell of dried fish, roasted plantain, and palm oil clung to the air. Women pounded yam in rhythm, their pestles striking like drums. But at dusk, when the sun sank low, the town changed. Shadows stretched long across the red ground. Huts glowed with the soft flame of palm oil lamps, and the beat of talking drums floated across the hills like a heartbeat from the ancestors. It was said that Okirima never truly belonged to the living. By day, yes, laughter, bargaining, weddings, children came by the river bank, but by night, the ancestors walked freely. The people of Okirima knew it, though some chose to pretend otherwise. Among them was a man named Osenachi. He was not a warrior, nor a great chief, but his name carried weight. He was respected as a man of gentle nature, with land that yielded abundant yams and cocoa, with a wife, Amara, whose kindness matched her beauty, and with children who filled his home with laughter. Yet, Osenachi carried an invisible burden, the memory of a warning whispered into his ears as a boy, a warning that returned to him with every sound of a funeral drum. That warning had come from Elder Ikenna, the oldest man in Okirima. His skin was wrinkled like cracked leather, his eyes pale and clouded with age, but his voice was strong, like a drum that refused to be silenced. One night, years ago, he had summoned Osenachi to his fireside. "Osenachi," he began, leaning on his carved staff, "do you know why the dead must be feared as much as they are loved?" Osenachi, still young then, had answered boldly, "Because they are powerful in the spirit land." The old man's head shook slowly, his Kawari-adorned beard swaying with emotion. "No, my son, because funerals are doors between the world of the living and the world of the dead. When the grave is dug and the drums are played, the gate opens. Some spirits come to bless us, others come to cling, to feed, to claim what is not theirs." The fire crackled, throwing sparks into the night. Osenachi leaned closer, the elder's words pulling him in like a charm. "Before you go to any funeral," he continued, "you must wash your body with salt water at dawn. Salt is no ordinary thing. It burns the tongue of spirits. It blinds their eyes. Without it, you are naked before them." He picked up a small gourd from beside the fire, shaking it so the herbs inside rattled. "Carry water mixed with herbs, bitter leaves, intum, and dogoniaro bark. Before you step into the burial ground, sprinkle 3 drops on your feet and 3 behind you as you leave. The drops mark your path, so no shadow follows. And when you return to your threshold, wash again and call the names of your ancestors. They will stand guard. Forget this, Osenachi, and your household will not sleep in peace." The young man had swallowed hard, the firelight reflecting in his eyes. "And if I forget, Elder," his cloudy gaze fixed on him with piercing weight, "then the spirits will not forget you." A wind had blown then, whistling through the raffia roofs, and Osenachi remembered shivering though the fire burned hot. That night, when he returned home, Amara noticed his troubled look. She was grinding pepper by the hearth, her wrapper tied high around her waist. She wiped her hands and touched his arm gently. "Husband, what weighs on you?" she asked. He told her of the elder's warning. Amara listened in silence, her eyes wide, her face pale in the lamplight. At last she nodded. "My mother told me the same when I was a girl. She said salt and herbs are not just for the body, but for the spirit. You must do as Elder Ikenna says, Osenachi, for the sake of us all." Their eldest child, little Adana, half asleep on her mat, stared and asked, "Papa, are spirits real?" Osenachi forced a gentle smile, brushing her hair from her forehead. "Yes, my child, spirits are real, but they do not harm those who respect them." Adana closed her eyes again, though she held her mother's hand tightly. Outside, the night stretched deep. Somewhere in the distance, the slow beat of drums began. Doom, doom, doom. It was the rhythm of morning, steady and heavy, like footsteps from another world. A voice carried faintly through the night, a wail of grief. Someone in Okirima had died. A funeral was coming, and Osenachi, heart heavy with the elder's warning, knew that his first test was near. The funeral drums of Okirima did not beat like the drums of festivals. Festival drums were quick, joyous, inviting the feet to dance. Funeral drums were slow, heavy, each beat a reminder that his soul had crossed the threshold into the land of shadows. On this day, the drums announced the death of Mama Nenoma, a woman known throughout Okirima for her kindness. She had lived a long life, raising children and grandchildren, feeding the hungry from her calabash even when her own pot was nearly empty. When the news of her passing spread, the town mourned deeply. Osenachi prepared himself carefully. At dawn, before the sun's first rays broke the horizon, he took a gourd of water and mixed it with rock salt. The grains dissolved slowly, hissing faintly like whispers. He poured the water over his head, scrubbing his chest, arms, and legs, whispering, "Let no shadow cling to me. Let no darkness follow me home." Amara watched silently, her hands folded. When he was done, she placed a small bundle of herbs in his hand, bitter leaves, dried bark and roots, steeped in water. "Do not forget what the elder told you," she reminded. "I will not," Osenachi replied. By mid-morning, the paths leading to Mama Nenoma's compound filled with people. Women wrapped in black cloth, men in dark wrappers tied at their waists, children clutching their mothers' sides. The air was thick with the smell of incense and palm oil, with smoke rising from cooking fires as women prepared food for mourners. The drummers sat under the great Udala tree, their hands striking skins stretched tight, sending sorrowful rhythms across the village. Elderly women wailed loudly, their cries piercing, their voices calling Nenoma's name again and again, as if grief could pull her back from the grave. Osenachi walked slowly with the others, his gourd of herbs hidden beneath his wrapper. At the entrance to the compound, just before stepping onto the sacred ground of mourning, he sprinkled 3 drops at his feet. The water darkened the red dust. He whispered, "I walk in, but I must walk out." He stepped inside. The body of Mama Nenoma lay on a mat, her face painted with camwood, her hands crossed gently over her chest. Around her, women fanned incense smoke, chanting songs of farewell. Children peered curiously from behind their mothers' backs, too young to understand, yet sensing the weight in the air. As the funeral went on, Osenachi noticed a group of young men near the back of the compound. They were men who had once left Okirima for the city. Men with polished shoes, shirts tucked in, speaking with the pride of those who thought themselves wiser than tradition. One of them, Chiweze, laughed openly when he saw Osenachi sprinkle herbs again as the burial procession began. "Look at him," Chiweze scoffed, his voice carrying, still bathing his salt water like an old woman. "These are stories to frighten children. Do you not see, my brothers? We are in new times. Spirits are only tales." A few others laughed, emboldened by his goodness, but Osenachi ignored them. Elder Ikena's warning rang in his mind. If you forget, the spirits will not forget you. The burial began at dusk. The grave was dug at the edge of the family compound, its mouth gaping like a wound in the earth. The body was lowered, the earth closing over it, while drums beat faster, louder, to guide the spirit's journey. As the last handful of red dust fell, the wind rose suddenly, cold and sharp, though the air had been still all day. Some women gasped, clutching their wrappers tighter. Osenachi sprinkled his herbs again, whispering prayers, then turned to leave. Behind him, he heard Chibuese's mocking laughter one last time. What a waste of water and herbs! That night, while the village lay in mourning silence, a cry pierced the dark. It came from Chibuese's house. The young man thrashed in his sleep, screaming that a dark figure sat on his chest. His family rushed to his side, sprinkling water, fanning him, but nothing helped. His eyes bulged, his hands clawed at his throat. For 3 nights it continued. By the 4th morning, Chibuese was dead. His face was twisted in terror, his mouth open as if still gasping for breath. The town was shaking. Some said it was fever, others whispered of spirits, but Elder Ikeno, leaning on his staff, spoke simply. The dead do not like to be mocked. Rituals are the bridge that keeps us safe. Osenachi's heart grew heavy. He had not wished for the young man's death, but the lesson was clear. He returned home that night, his children watching him wash at the threshold, whispering the names of his ancestors. "Papa," little Adana asked, clutching his hand, "why do you always wash before coming in?" Osenachi looked into her wide eyes, his voice steady but sorrowful. "Because, my child, not every spirit belongs in our home." And though she did not fully understand, she nodded, for the drums of death still echoed in her ears. The months after Mama Noma's burial passed quietly. But the memory of Chibueze's death lingered in every whispered conversation. At night, when the fire burned low, mothers would hush their children with warnings, "Do not mock the old ways, or the dead will follow you home." Even the young men who once laughed at the rituals now avoided the subject, though pride kept them silent. Life went on in Okirima, as it always did, with markets buzzing, drums calling to festivals, and the river flowing steady as time. Yet beneath it all, there was a sense of unease. The people had been reminded that the world of the living was not sealed, that doors sometimes opened without mercy. It was during this restless season that Obidike, a wealthy trader, died suddenly. His death shook the town, for Obidike had been a man of great influence, one whose caravans carried kola nuts and palm oil across distant lands. His funeral was expected to be vast. People came from the city, from neighboring villages, from every corner of the land to honor him. On the evening of the burial, the cemetery swelled with mourners. Torches burned brightly, their flames dancing in the night breeze. Drums beat slow and deep, like the footsteps of giants, and women sang songs of farewell. Smoke from burning incense curled into the air, mingling with the smell of freshly turned earth. Osenachi walked with his family, carrying his gourd of herbs close to his chest. Before entering the graveyard, he sprinkled drops of water before his feet. "I walk in, but I must walk out," he whispered. Then he crossed the threshold into the land of the dead. The cemetery lay beneath a grove of iroko trees, their branches clawing at the moonlight like skeletal hands. Graves stretched out in neat rows, mounds of red earth marked with carved stones or wooden stakes. As the chants rose, Osenachi felt a strange chill on his skin, as if unseen eyes followed his every step. The body of Obidike was lowered into the grave, the final rites performed. The crowd wailed, dust rising as mourners cast handfuls of earth upon the coffin. Yet, as the last drumbeat faded, Osenachi felt something shift. The air grew colder, the shadows stretched longer than they should, the flames of the torches flickered wildly, though the wind was still. Then, he saw them. Figures moved between the graves. At first, he thought it was latecomers to the funeral. But no, their forms were wrong. They bent and swayed unnaturally, their bodies half shadow, half smoke, their eyes empty as hollow wells. They did not walk, they drifted, sliding across the earth without sound. Osenachi's heart pounded. He clutched his gourd tightly, whispering the names of his ancestors. "Eze, Maduka, stand with me." The shadows paused, their heads tilting as if listening. But then one figure stepped forward. Its face was pale, its features blurred, but when Osenachi's eyes focused, recognition struck him like a spear. It was Chibueze. The young man's spirit looked hollow, his lips moving as though chewing words he could not speak. Then, in a low, broken voice, he groaned. "Brother, why do you keep me away? Do you not see? The land of the living is warm. The land of the dead is cold. Let me in. Let me in." Osenachi's breath caught in his throat. The memory of Chibueze's mocking laughter flashed in his mind, followed by the sight of his twisted corpse. "No," Osenachi whispered fiercely, sprinkling herbs in a circle at his feet. "You mocked the ways and now you pay their price. You cannot follow me home." The spirit's eyes darkened, its mouth stretched open in a silent scream. The other shadows began to move closer, their whispers growing louder, a chorus of voices rising from beneath the earth. "Stay with us, stay. Your flesh is warm, your breath is sweet." The drums of the living beat faster, as though sensing the danger. Osenachi's heart pounded with them. He sprinkled the herbs behind him, whispering prayers with trembling lips, then turned and walked swiftly away, his back burning as though eyes pierced him from every side. At the edge of the graveyard, he dared to glance back. The shadows had halted, their forms dissolving slowly into the night, their whispers fading into the rustling leaves of the iroko trees. But Chibueze's face lingered in his mind. The spirit had spoken not with malice alone, but with hunger, a longing so deep it chilled Osenachi's soul.
That night, as he washed himself at the threshold of his home, his hands shaking, Amara asked him gently, "What did you see, my husband?" He looked at her, his eyes haunted. "I saw what happens to those who forget. Chibueze is not gone. He wanders, hungry, because he mocked the ways. And he is not alone." Amara drew her wrapper tighter, her face pale in the lamplight. She pressed her hand to his shoulder. "Then you must never forget, for our sake, for the children." And as the night deepened, Osenachi sat awake, the sound of whispering shadows echoing in his ears.
The days after Obidaki's burial passed heavily. Though the town returned to its rhythm of market days and evening drumming, a quiet dread hovered in the air. Those who had been at the cemetery whispered of strange winds, sudden chills, and shadows that bent against the torchlight. None spoke openly, but everyone knew something had stirred among the graves. Osenachi carried the memory of Chibueze's hollow face everywhere he went. Even while trading in the market, the vision returned, the blood eyes, the voice begging for warmth. He grew quieter, his laughter rare, and though he kept to his duties, his children noticed his distant gaze. It was in this uneasy season that news came. Ozoma, Osenachi's cousin, had fallen ill. Ozoma was younger, full of pride, and often quick with a mocking smile. He admired Osenachi's success but dismissed his devotion to tradition. "All these baths and herbs are the games of frightened old men. Do you not see how the world changes? We must walk forward, not backward." When Ozoma's father died, the funeral was large and filled with all the proper rites, but Ozoma himself ignored them. He arrived late, unwashed, and sat among the mourners without so much as sprinkling water. When the elders asked why, he waved them off. "I came to honor my father, not to play with leaves and chants. He lived well, he rests well, that is enough." Osenachi had tried to pull him aside, speaking low. "Ozoma, do not take this lightly. The dead do not rest if the living are careless." But Ozoma only laughed. "You fear shadows, cousin. I fear nothing." 3 nights after the burial, cries rose from Ozoma's household. Osenachi, roused from sleep, rushed through the dark with other villagers. There, in the lamplight, they found Ozoma trembling violently, his eyes wide, his lips muttering nonsense. His wife clung to him, weeping, while the children huddled in corners. "Look at him," an elder whispered. "The spirits are feeding on him." Indeed, Ozoma's skin had grown pale, his body shaking as though seized by invisible hands. His voice cracked into wild laughter, then into screams. "They are here. Father calls me, but others too. Shadows everywhere. They drag me. They drag me." Osenachi dropped to his knees, clutching his gourd, and began to sprinkle herbs around the room. He called aloud, invoking ancestors, demanding mercy. But the air was thick with a foul presence, the smell of grave earth clinging to every breath. Through the open doorway, a cold wind surged. Lamps flickered, shadows lengthened, and for a heartbeat, Osenachi saw them, a crowd of restless forms pressed against the walls of the house, pale eyes gleaming, skeletal fingers scratching at the air. Osenachi's screams split the night. He thrashed, his body aching, then fell limp. The spirits vanished as suddenly as they came, leaving silence heavy as a burial cloth. Ozoma lay still. His wife's wails rose like a blade through the night, and the children sobbed as neighbors held them close. The elders gathered, their faces grave. One spoke the words all had feared. He mocked the ways. He thought himself stronger than the path of our fathers. Now the dead have claimed him. Osenachi bowed his head, grief tightening his chest. He had tried to warn his cousin, but pride had deafened him. Now Ozoma's spirit would not rest, for he had left the world unshielded. That night, Osenachi performed the cleansing with heavier hands than ever before. He bathed in salt water, poured libations at the threshold, and whispered long into the night. When Amara asked if the spirits had gone, he answered softly, "Not for him. His voice will wander, but for us, we must not falter." And from that night forward, the town no longer mocked Osenachi's rituals. Fear had silenced doubts.
The weeks after Uzoma's death were thick with unease. The people of Okirima walked with lowered voices, their eyes shifting often to shadows. The market still bustled, but laughter was thinner. Even the children played less freely, their games shortened by sudden glances towards the cemetery grove. But death does not ask permission. It came again, as it always does. This time it claimed Nuafo, an elder drummer whose hands had guided countless funerals. His readings had carried the voices of mourners, stitched together the prayers of priests, and held the heartbeat of the town. When news of his passing spread, a hush fell over Okirima. "If even the drummer is gone," the elders murmured, How will we call the spirits to peace? The funeral was set for a moonless night, for Noafo had wished to be buried when the skies were dark, so that my drum may be the first light, he had once said. And so it was. The gathering. The town gathered at the cemetery, each mourner carrying a torch. The night was heavy, the air damp with the smell of rain, though no clouds passed overhead. The Iroko trees loomed like giants keeping watch. At the center, Noafo's great drum was placed beside his body, its leather stretched tight, its wood glimmering with oil. Younger drummers began the rhythm, slow, deliberate, echoing the sound of footsteps. Osenachi arrived with Amara and the children, his herbs close to his chest. He sprinkled water before entering, bathed his forehead with salt, and whispered, "I walk where the living should not linger. Keep me whole." The burial began. Chants rose. The crowd swayed, and the drums deepened, calling across the veil. Torches flickered with each beat, shadows leaping across the graves. Then it happened. The spirits arrive. As Noafon's coffin was lowered, the drumming shifted on its own. None of the young men's hands had struck, yet the drum thundered, louder, sharper, as if an unseen master played. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The rhythm was ancient, older than any remembered. A call not of men, but of spirits. Torches guttered, smoke thickened, and a cold wind swept through the cemetery. From the darkness between the trees, figures emerged. They were many, men and women, some with faces whole, others blurred, their bodies half-formed, like smoke wearing rags. Their voices wove with the drum beat, a chorus that was neither song nor cry, but something in between. A sound that made children clutch their mothers and men grip their charms. Osenachi's heart thundered. He sprinkled herbs, forming a small circle around his family, whispered fiercely, "Do not leave the ring. No matter what you hear, do not step out." Amara's face glistened with fear, but she nodded, pulling the children close. The spirits drifted nearer. Some stretched hands toward Bolognas, their eyes hollow, their mouths moving with voiceless hunger. One spirit bent low to a touch, and the flame died without a breath of wind. Others circled the coffin, as though unwilling to let the drummer pass into peace. Then the great drum thundered once more, louder than ever. The spirits froze, their heads tilting towards it. The skin of the drum trembled, though no hand touched it. From the shadows stepped a figure Osenachi knew. His breath caught. It was Noafo himself. But not as he had been in life. His form was tall, his face carved with lines of age, yet glowing faintly as though lit from within. He carried no drumstick, yet the rhythm followed him, echoing with each step. The crowd wailed, torn between awe and terror. An elder dropped to his knees. The drummer walks between the worlds. Noafon's spirit lifted a hand, and the restless dead fell silent. His voice was deep, rolling like thunder over the graves. "Why do you wander, children of dust? Why do you cling to what is not yours?" The restless spirits shrank back, their forms quivering, but from among them stepped a familiar shadow, thin, blood, with hollow eyes. Chibweze. His voice was ragged. "I wonder because no one called me home. I wonder because I laughed. I hunger. I thirst. The living have warmth. We have only ashes. Let me in." A murmur swept through the mourners. Some began to cry, others to pray. The elders pressed charms to their chests. Noafon's spirit thundered. The living must guard the living. The dead must rest. The ways of the fathers are the shield, and without them, the grave is a broken gate. He turned to the crowd, his glowing eyes fixed on Osenachi. "You, keeper of herbs, do you fear?" Osenachi's knees trembled, but he stepped forward within his circle. His voice shook, yet he spoke. "I fear, but I obey. I do not mock the path. I honor it even when others laugh. Teach me, spirit of the drum, how do we seal the gate?" Noafon raised his hand, and the great drum roared again, shaking the ground. With faith, with blood remembered, with fire unbroken. He looked upon the restless spirit. "Begone!" At his command, the torches flared high, flames stretching like spears. The spirits shrieked, their forms unraveling, scattering into smoke that vanished among the trees. Shibweze lingered, his hollow eyes meeting Osenachi's, sorrow etched deep. Then he too dissolved, leaving only silence. The drumming ceased. The air grew still. Noafon's spirit lowered his hand and turned to his coffin. He laid himself within, his glow dimming. The lid closed with no mortal touch. And just like that, the night was ordinary again. The crowd stumbled away in silence, no one daring to speak until they reached their homes. Mothers pressed salt to their children's foreheads. Elders muttered prayers. The town had seen the thin line between life and death torn open, and none would forget. Osenachi sat outside his home long after the cleansing, his body weary, his mind restless. Amara touched his hand. "You stood firm, my husband." Even the spirit saw it. But Osenachi's eyes were far away, on the silent stars. "The gate is never closed forever. I must always keep watch." And in the distance, faint as a dying echo, he thought he heard it, the low beat of a drum, guiding the dead where they belonged.